I'm joined in the studio now by UNM Athletic Director Eddie Nunez, Helen Grant, author of a report on UNM's Title IX status, Heather Cowan, UNM Title IX Compliance Officer, and Martha Burke, an author and political psychologist. But first, we have some breaking news. Seems that on August 8th, UNM New Mexico Attorney General Hector Balderas reported that we have to repeat the Regents meeting with proper notice and full explanation of the matters to be discussed. I need to ask you, Eddie, how do you take that news?
I can't really comment too much right now in light of that. Our university is reviewing that document and assessing the next steps. So at this point, that's all I really can say to that matter.
Is there a possibility of repeating the meeting at all?
Again, that's in the hands of our legal counsel and our regents and our president of the university.
Okay, well, that's something we're going to keep a close eye on. But Martha, let me ask you, you are an expert in gender issues and politics. So why is it important for University of New Mexico to be Title IX compliant?
Well, it's important because it's a public institution that owes its public, its taxpayers, its fans, and people in general the best they can be. And you can't be the best if you're discriminating against more than half of your students in one particular area, and that's athletics. And that, I think the report that Heather has put together shows pretty starkly not only the discrimination against female athletes in participation opportunities, but the scholarship differences are way, way out of whack. And it's a matter of fairness, it's a matter of transparency and accountability.
Yes, I see that, and I was looking at something and it said men get 63% of the awards and 57.5% of the male participants receive aid. Now, Helen, let me ask you, how did you go about preparing this report?
Basically, I do an assessment of the total program, so I look at all the documents that are sent in by the institution to me, like squad lists that have your NCAA squad lists that have your financial assistance on there. And I just, you know, I have a process that I go through that's based on the Title IX Investigator's Manual of how an OCR individual would do a review of a program to determine compliance with Title IX.
Now, what were some of the key findings that you discovered?
Well, I would like to back up and say that why is it important for University of New Mexico to comply with Title IX is because it's a federal law that all institutions have to comply with. So, but I don't think that you have to understand there's a lot of specifics that go into the participation opportunities, it goes into financial assistance, and also there are other areas of Title IX that I don't feel like that the University of New Mexico nor many of our institutions are really discriminating against women in some of those areas and some of the support areas. But when you look at financial assistance in particular, you also have to take into effect that the NCAA has strict regulations on how many scholarships that can be provided for men's and women's teams, and sometimes that plays a major role in not being able to give the women more scholarship money because, you know, within your national organization you're not allowed to. You'll be violating those rules.
I understand that.
May I ask you, does the NCAA dictate, for example, as we have at the University of New Mexico, 110 football scholarships?
It's 85.
It's 85.
It's 85
yes.
scholarships.
Yes.
So all the players do not have a scholarship.
No,
That's
no.
correct.
But do they dictate the number of scholarships specifically?
Yes, the
NCAA
has the financial assistance. It's a bylaw 15 that puts the number of scholarships that you're able to award to all men's and women's teams.
Wouldn't it behoove the NCAA to working in accordance with Title IX and their regulations to provide more scholarships for female athletes so that that number isn't really that big anymore?
Well, actually, the NCAA did do something many years ago. They reduced the number of scholarships for men across the board for all men's sports, reduced those limitations. So they have done something, but you know, when the NCAA makes rules related to scholarships, they look at the number of participants that would normally be on a team. and they kind of base that. Also, you know, what's out there as far as financially, our institutions. They look at all of those things, and it's the membership that votes on the number of scholarships for the women or men's and women's programs, period.
Can I ask about the number of people that ought to be on a team? I find it amazing that up until this last very small cut, 3 players, that football had virtually 10 times the number of people on the roster that were on the field at any one time. And that seems extremely excessive to me when you look at the participation rates, like basketball has 16 to 19, for example. So it's going to be greatly out of whack. Is that dictated by anybody except tradition and belief that football is king, so to speak?
I don't want to say it's dictated on football's king. I think what you have to understand is when you're looking at a football program, yes, they have 100+ student athletes, and right now probably the national average for most Power 5 schools is over 120 student athletes.
Well, that's irrelevant to what is actually necessary.
It's not, because we have to also understand what we're trying to do as an institution and where we're trying to compete and how we can put our student athletes in a position to be successful. By saying we would just have 85 really is, again, what are the challenges, what opportunities are we presenting our student athletes? Are we giving them an opportunity across the board to be successful in every sport? I mean, it's not just football. I mean, if I'm doing the same thing for any one of the other sports, baseball, soccer.
But in that line of thinking, Eddie, let me ask you,
116, right?
As the UNM athletic director, how important is it that University of New Mexico is Title IX compliant?
Absolutely, #1 importance. You know, gender equity, to me, is something that I'm very strongly support since before getting here. My responsibility as director of athletics, making sure we do our part as an institution, that we comply with those laws. So when I first came here, and I've said it since before, that was something I wanted to make sure that we were in compliance with. And doing a review, making sure that we look at every aspect of it was a priority to me. It wasn't a priority to do because of one factor or another. It was because I know I want to be able to support all our student athletes the way they need to be supported to have the opportunity to achieve success.
So it's a part of your vision.
Absolutely
for the program. I completely understand and respect that. Heather, let me ask you, you've been the Title IX compliance officer since 2015. Now, why has it been so long since there's been a report on UNM's Title IX compliance?
Yeah, so obviously I can't speak to what happened before I took over the role. What I do know is that since I took over the role, we've really been focused as an institution on our DOJ compliance with that aspect of Title IX. We definitely knew, you know, it was in the back of my head, like, oh, we need to do an equity analysis in the athletics area as well. And so I was really grateful when Eddie came in and made that one of his priorities, because it was definitely long overdue.
Okay. Now, what are the penalties for being out of compliance? Is there a federal penalty? Does the university lose federal dollars?
Yeah, so if we're out of compliance with Title IX, the government could say you can no longer offer federal financial aid, which would be all of the student loans, it would be Pell Grants, it would be work study, all of those things, as well as it could potentially impact some of our research dollars.
Now, how often does that actually happen to a university that finds itself out of compliance?
Not very often.
Quite honestly, it's never happened, because when you have that review, or if you have a Title IX or OCR investigation, then you're going to put in place plans for improvement so that will not happen.
But who's to ensure that the plans for improvement are actualized?
OCR and, well, the athletic department, the institution is overall responsible for it. But
I mean, the thing is an institution isn't going to say, well, yeah, let's just, you know, roll those dice and see if the federal government actually follows through and takes away our funding. Institutions are going to go through, and I mean, you also don't want to get to the point where you're having to spend dollars fighting the federal government in court.
There are a couple of ways you can be in compliance besides proportionality, which is the shorthand for what was used. And one is showing that you are making progress. Obviously, UNM has not been making progress. They did put in beach volleyball a few years ago, but they just took it out, so that one could not be used. Or you can show that you're already in compliance, which is pretty far out of reach right now.
And I'd like to expand upon that. Given beach volleyball, Eddie, now, the main issue was that there was a lack of facilities. The team was playing at a restaurant and bar in town. and it would estimate it would cost, I have here, $6 million to build a proper facility. But why, and I know you're recently new to the job, why hasn't anything been done in the 4 years to create a facility for the beach volleyball team where it's one of the fastest growing sports in America? Other teams, schools, tournaments could use to help generate income for that. Why hasn't that step been taken?
Well, first of all, I need to correct you. It's not a $6 million investment for a facility. That facility would be somewhere around $350,000, and depending again how much more you have to invest into how you want to.
So it's a lot cheaper than anticipated.
Well, that's $6 million.
Easier.
Well, no, because $6 million again. There's other factors that came into play when we started this process. A lot of it, as we said from the beginning, dealt with the financial and the financial aspect of our department, where we stood, how things looked, what can we support. And again, it goes back to, are we providing our coaches and our student athletes the necessary means to be able to be successful? And not even just successful, can we support them at the level necessary? So when we started addressing all this, there's other factors as far as the overall budget or what's necessary for us to be able to truly be in a position to be where we need to be. In respect to beach volleyball now, we have to understand it is a fast-growing sport. Is it the highest? Honestly, it's not. There's others that are moving just at a rapid pace as that one. I would say that the decision that was made, I wasn't around during that time, and I've said this before, I think the idea, the intent to add beach volleyball probably was there to add it and invest the money. Throughout the years, why budget cuts, other things might have attributed to why those investments weren't made. And again, I can't speak to that behalf, but I can tell you that from when it was implemented to where we are today, we haven't made the strides necessary to be able to support that program as necessary.
I understand that. It just seems from an outsider's view that it's more of a Band-Aid for Title IX that it got put on.
It seemed like it when they put it in.
It feels like that, so I just wanted to express some of the concerns. Now, you mentioned something. You mentioned that there are other factors involved outside of budgets. What are some of those factors? What are some of those factors that you at the UNM Athletic Department are specifically looking at to address?
Well, no, I think first and foremost, you got to be compliant with Title IX. I mean, that's another aspect of what we're talking about here. And to be compliant with Title IX, what are some of the things that we have to invest in? And yes, we go back to the investment of support for our student athletes, for our facilities, for our coaches. All those play a big part. And right now, if we look at it, we go back to our budgets and we can look at all those different factors that have put us where we are today. We have two serious issues right now that, from my standpoint, have to be linked in perspective, because we have to comply with Title IX and we have to address our financials. There's, the countless audits that have attested to where we are from a budget side. We've also looked at other factors. We can look at ins and outs of where our budget stands, and right now, currently, our budget in the Mountain West is 8th, and it's not going to. And next year, it'll probably be one step further because it's the same budget that we had this year. We have to do a better job as an institution, as a state, as a university, as an athletic department, to make sure we're fiscally responsible. And doing so was part of that discussion point.
Can I just jump in here about the push and pull between Title IX and finances? Because we're always told we have to cut men's sports because of Title IX. Football has traditionally, always, and universally taken the biggest part of the budget, and it has been responsible for cutting many, many men's teams. But the scapegoat is always Title IX. And we hear that football makes money. Football does not make money. I looked up the subsidies for the athletic department in total, done by the Chronicle of Higher Education. And UNM's athletic department is about 40% subsidized from outside sources, meaning institutional money that is transferred over and student fees, which keep going up so that we can have 103 people on the football team.
Actually, they've gone down, Martha, and the numbers that you've talked about were actually at 26% of funding from the institution, not 48. And so those numbers have continually gone down. I know, and we've talked about this in respect to football, and I liked Helen because she's dealt with it from a national level a lot more than I have, and talk about those pieces of the puzzle with football.
First, let me say that there's been numerous teams that have been cut, men's and women's, but majority of it men's teams, over the last 10 to 15 years. And those cuts have not been, in the recent years, have not been blamed on Title IX. They've been blamed on the cuts to higher education that we've experienced
Well, they're
over the
being
last.
blamed now on Title IX.
Well, but it feeds in. That is,
Read your
Title
papers.
IX is part of it. Title IX is part of it, but that's the people outside of athletics, outside of Title IX consulting that are blaming it on Title IX. Those are because of budget cuts, and we know across this country that in our big programs, at our Power 5 conference programs, our FBS, the other conference schools, those that have had football, that's what's fed those programs.
There
And
are only about 20% of football
you can't
programs
say-
make any
But Helen,
money.
let me ask you, Helen, does it raise eyebrows for compliance people that a program that was started to address the Title IX issues 4 years ago recently gets cut? Does it raise eyebrows at all?
Well, sure, it does, but again, you have to go back to, you know, I would like to finish this about the football programs on paper. When you look at expenses and what they bring in, may not make money, but it's that external support you get that when those football programs, and you look at any of our top FBS schools, even here, and it's been a struggle here lately, but when you look at those top FBS programs, the money that football has brought in, you look at the quality of the facilities, the quality of the experience, the support services that are provided for all of the men's and women's sports. You wouldn't have
Are you
that.
counting the dirty needles and
I am
trash
counting the
and
institutions that I go and sit down and meet with and
I
review
think-
facilities.
But
What needs to
let's
be
get back
understood,
to
what needs
beach
to be understood is
volleyball
the Mountain West Conference. Our conference distribution that comes from the Mountain West, 80% of that is due to football. And that doesn't just support football, that supports every one of our student athletes.
I would really
The revenue
seriously take.
distribution.
It's barbershop talk that the UNM program regularly plays the Arizona States, the LSUs, the Alabamas to get beat 63-0, but come home with a check close to $1 million to help everybody out. But in regards to the Title IX problems, like bottom line, the Board of Regents, they not asked you for a plan to decrease the department's budget by $2 million over the year. Would we be addressing any of these Title IX issues?
Absolutely, we still would be, because as I first came in, I wanted to do an assessment of our department, and it was where we are and what we can do to be able to support our student athletes. So we would still be looking at some of the same issues when in respect to Title IX, but there was other factors. Again, when we're looking at our budget, even if they told me to look at it or not, I still had to look at it, because my challenge here was I needed to look at our budget and needed to look at all our financials. So if the task was to be done by this date or a year later, the reality is that component was still going to be a factor, just as the Title IX was. When we started the Title IX approach, it wasn't because of this task that was given to me. It was something that had already been in place and was in the process of being done. So when we look at both of those, when at the end of the day, you're making a decision that deals with not just financial or Title IX, both of those have to be considered, or any other circumstance that you have to look
Well,
at.
as the athletic director and the Title IX compliance officers, how can you assure that in the future UNM will be compliant?
Yeah, so Eddie and I now, we meet monthly to go over all of these, all the issues that have come up, not just in athletics, but also on main campus. I think that communication and collaboration is really key. We've put in a lot more trainings for the athletic staff and the student athletes, because gender equity in athletics is only one small piece of Title IX. Title IX is very
Absolutely.
broad and covers a lot more areas in terms of gender equity. And then the other thing is, there's going to be a lot more of these Title IX gender equity analyses done in athletics on a regular basis.
No,
And I'll say this, when I spoke at the board meeting, I said there's a reason why this Title IX overview or assessment happened, is because I feel strongly that we need to do a part for our institution, the University of New Mexico, to make sure we comply. So I'm accountable for that. As the director of athletics, that is something I'm responsible for, and I'll continue to be along the way. As long as I'm the director of athletics at the University of New Mexico, I will do everything in my power to make sure we do our part working with my staff, with the university and others to make sure that we're looking at national trends, we're seeing what's happening, but we're also making sure we can do what we can.
Are you willing to promise that there'll be a lot more transparency on this issue? We were just, within this discussion, we were understanding the discrepancy and a little bit of difficulty. People are blaming it on budget cuts. Other people are blaming it on Title IX. I think that's about transparency and really getting out to the public, and particularly the parents and the athletes, what is happening and what are the causes of some of these problems.
Absolutely.
Is that something that we can pretty much agree to?
I would like to just add that this whole discussion has ignored the one elephant in the room, and that is, why do we keep football at all? Football is the biggest budget user. I would dispute that it makes money if you count everything that goes into the mix, including coaches' salaries. But we never talk about, would we be better off without football? You look at schools that don't have football, they have cut it because it's fiscally irresponsible to keep it.
Well, that's a good question.
So it's a dangerous sport. It's declining in support from the public, especially at lower levels, because kids are getting hurt permanently, and soccer is on the rise. So what do? We cut soccer.
We'll see what happens. That's a good question. Perhaps we can have that on another panel, particularly since football season is coming up. I want to thank you all for joining me, being a part of this fantastic conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.